Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Ice Cream Fitness here. Today I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about the topic of bodybuilding aesthetics versus athletic aesthetics. Because this is something that I think a lot of people lose sight of. Because bodybuilding has become so prevalent and bodybuilders are featured on fitness magazines, bodybuilders have YouTube channels, and so many people who get into training base their view of what is aesthetic based upon the bodybuilding world rather than the athletic world. And it's quite an interesting change because historically, all throughout history, the models for our Greek statues and Roman statues and that we thought were classic aesthetics, these were either manual laborers that they used for the models, or these were their serious athletes. These were their wrestlers and people who competed in their Olympic events back then. These were athletes. These were not guys who sat around doing endless amounts of concentration curls trying to get a perfect bicep peak. And you'll see channels out there that discusses, particularly people like Johnny Candido, which is a smaller channel, but he has quite a bit of good material. I like a lot of what he has to say. And then larger channels like Omar Issoff, they both seem to have more of a focus upon training for athletic performance and just letting their body follow suit rather than spend time worried about developing non-functional aesthetics or a muscle balance that doesn't need to exist for normal athletic purposes or producing force through the different planes of motion. Because realistically, it isn't useful in most sports to work single jointed movements. Most of your training and athletic movements are going to be most strengthened by multi-joint compound movements. So what you will generally see in various athletes, even today, because we have so many diverse sports, if you look at the leaner ones, not the fat ones where you can't see the muscle, because a lot of power lifters, a lot of us are fat, but a lot are lean and ripped. And you look at different wrestlers, Olympic athletes, Olympic lifters, even the leaner power lifters, MMA fighters are a perfect example. Because MMA fighters are required to have a wide diversity of athletic skills and strength and explosive power. And what you find is that people who train this way, their muscle balance will be based around what is necessary for them to generate force through a plane of motion, because almost all sports train for explosiveness. There is almost no sport in the world I can think of that you would ever train to move slower. You always want speed and power with everything you do, so your movements are explosive, and the muscles that are the weakest link in the chain of any given movement, whether it's, a push here, a push overhead, pull, a squat, a kick, a punch, grappling, whatever the weakest muscle is, that's the one that's going to grow the most. Because it's the weak link, it's getting more stimulation, it's having to work harder, so it's going to grow faster. And you will grow in proportion to what is necessary for functional movements. Whereas then with bodybuilding, you are going for what we now consider to be the classical bodybuilding look of the proportions that they're looking for, which generally require you to isolate muscles because, quite frankly, for the majority of people, unless you have great bicep genetics, you simply will not build biceps in proportion to the body by doing deadlifts and chin-ups and actual functional movements that you will as if you add curls and things in it. So someone who does a great deal of isolation work and who goes in and does it fine-tuning to achieve that look is going to have a very, very different look. And not because of their genetics. Everyone's insertions and genetics are going to make them look different, and some people are going to look fantastic no matter what they do just to their genetics. I am unfortunately not one of them. But people who do deadlifts, power cleans, push presses, weighted chin-ups, front squats, back squats, things like this to build most of their size, and then their other training, whether they're wrestling or their martial arts training or whatever their sport demands of them, they're going to have very different proportions because they have functional proportions that are going to develop in requirement to those functional movements than someone who is doing tons of isolation work to go in and develop each muscle to a proportion they're looking for based upon a different set of standards. And that's what people need to understand, the difference of what standard you are using, because to someone who is used to working around athletes and not bodybuilders, to them the athletic aesthetics might actually look better, and some people would argue that it is better because it is functional. They are developed proportionate to what is required for normal, natural athletic movements, useful in the real world or in sports, rather than disproportionate development that is pleasing to the eye by bodybuilding standards. So there you have it, guys. There is the difference. And who's right, I can't honestly tell you, because it's a matter of opinion. It's a matter of point of view and opinion as to which one you think is better and why. And hopefully you guys are enjoying this new mic. So I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time. But let me give you guys an unesthetic athletic bicep shot before I go.